welcome to this week's edition of The Briefing Room. I'm your host, Bill Froehlich from WTCM Radio News, and it's our weekly roundup with news makers, the people covering the news across northern Michigan. And this week we're rolling up our sleeves and we're talking sports. As we get into the high school football season, we wanted to take a moment to bring in a couple of gentlemen who cover sports across northern Michigan in various ways. So let's go around the table, and all three of these guys are new to the briefing room this week. I'll start right across from me. We've got Greg Gielczyk from Grand Traverse Insider. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Appreciate you coming in, and also Mike Eckert from the Traverse City Record Eagle. Mike, welcome to you.
Thanks for having me.
And Jeremy Erickson, a photographer with 9 and 10 News.
Hey Bill, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good.
Let's kind of get a little bit of the background of all you guys. And Greg, we could start with you. You give us, I know you've got a long history of covering sports in northern Michigan, but give us the Cliffs Notes of how long you've been around and where people can see your work now.
Yes, I feel like it's been a little bit too long at times, you know. But I started at the Manistee paper. I was there for about 36 years, doing sports in daily. I was a one-man show, actually. I was the sports department, and after a while, I was also the sports photographer. So did everything there, and from there, I've now gone on to work for the Grand Traverse Insider, which is a weekly, and we're feature-oriented. So it's a little bit different theme and kind of interesting, and I've been enjoying that, you know, getting to do something different. Although I did features at Manistee, but not, you know, not every week, not every day, you know, that type of thing. And also do some work for the leader out of Kalkaska covering forest area sports, and also the Langton Daily News doing Manistee High and Manistee Catholic Central sports.
Still a busy guy.
Still busy, keeping busy. I got to keep moving.
Nice. And let's talk to Mike about your work at the Record Eagle. How long have you been at the paper there?
I've been here a little more than 4 years. I grew up downstate. I worked at my hometown paper for 3.5 years before that, and then got the opportunity to come up here, and it's been great. It's been a lot of fun to be up here.
Nice. And Jeremy, I know you do a lot of news coverage at 9 and 10, but you also dabble in sports a little bit as well.
I do dabble, yeah. I mainly the news side of things, but I have been shooting sports kind of on and off about 3 years now. So I've been working for 9 and 10 News for about 4, so I kind of had the first year off of sports, and then whenever they need me, I fill in and help out with that. So.
Well, let's talk about what that means for folks at home. I mean, when people go to the football games or basketball games and see the camera guys on the sidelines, or the reporters with the notebooks up in the stands, the videographer down on the field, that's you. So tell us what kind of goes into a Friday night show, putting that all together.
Right. Well, for us at 9 and 10, we have a pretty big sports cast on Friday. Most of our 11 o'clock broadcast is devoted solely to sports, and so it's quite a production, actually. We have sometimes around 6 or 7 guys out shooting football games or basketball games or whatever it is that's going on, and so for me, shooting a football game, which I'm sure I'll be getting into pretty soon here. It's a lot of fun. It's something out of the ordinary. Like I said, I primarily do news stuff, so it's kind of fun to get out there and throw the camera on my shoulder and follow these guys around. And for me, it's a lot of it's keeping track of the scoreboard and
right.
That type of thing. So a lot of that. It's a lot of fun.
A lot of setup goes into that too. Folks probably maybe don't give much thought to what goes into planning out your coverage for the paper or planning out a Friday night. I know too firsthand what it's like to try to schedule. Well, we want every guy to get 2 games, and you got to get from Manistee to Ludington, or you're going to get from Buckley to Mesick. So there's a lot of planning that goes on behind the scenes too ahead of time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's kind of a timing aspect of things where you have to be back to be able to get it all written and edited and everything on time too, and have it ready for the show. So you're looking at maybe being there for a quarter of the game and then rushing off to your other game and then getting a quarter of that and then trying to make it back in time to get everything cut together. And
people always say, "Why you missed the best highlight?"
Yeah.
But you got a lot of places you got to be.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't stay for the whole thing, but if we want to see the highlights at 10 or 11, it's we got to do it quick.
That's right. Well, Mike, what about at the Record Eagle? Do you bounce around to different schools, different games every week versus what you do ahead of time, maybe talking to coaches in advance?
When we cover one, we're kind of there. Our photographers will try to bounce around if they can, but when you go cover it, you're there for the whole thing, which is interesting. It kind of makes you focus on one game then. It'd be nice to be able to see what's going on all over the place, but for us, when you cover a game, it makes your Friday or Thursday, if the games are earlier, makes that day really interesting because you go out and you cover something, and then as soon as you're done, you race back to the office and start answering the phone calls. Since we're not out at a number of different places, we rely then on the coaches to call us with all their information. So and then you're on a deadline to boot. So it makes it a really interesting kind of an adrenaline rush there on deadline, getting everything together and writing your story, answering phones, but it's fun. It's like election night every night. You see the news people when they get their election coverage, and we do that all the time, and it's fun. Once you get used to it and you're comfortable with it, it's quite a rush.
That's funny you say that too. I can just imagine again, and having done a little sports on my own too. You are waiting for those phone calls, whether it's from a coach or a parent, and there's nothing worse for me than news time, and it's like I still don't have a score from school X. We're still waiting, so always rely on those when you can't be everywhere. Greg, what about you? As a feature writer primarily now, how many games do you still get to go to, and how much of that is kind of contacting schools ahead of time, trying to find a good inside scoop?
Yeah, I still go to a few, but a lot of the times it's a lot easier if you're going to doing features to go to practices because there's more time that that they can devote to helping you out. If there's a certain player you want to talk to, or maybe a longtime coach that's been there a long time, because during before or after a game is a little crazy, and it's not so easy. But still, if I want to get some action photos, which sometimes we discuss about doing, I'll go to some games, and especially if it's a team from a little further away that is in our coverage area and want to do something about them. Then I'll go to that game and get some pictures on the particular player or something like that. But not as much as I used to. And, like Mike was mentioning about the adrenaline rush, it's even more so during tournaments, especially basketball. You've got, 3 teams playing in 3 different sites, and you go to one and you maybe get somebody to go to another, but then you've got to get back and,
right.
And then they've got to get back and everything got to, be coordinated. And it's a lot like I think he's right, like election night every night. The tournaments especially gets really wild. But and sometimes I miss that a little bit. There is that rush that you get from that. But doing features now, it's a little bit different perspective, and I've gotten to enjoy that quite a bit.
I'm sure if you wanted to, you could still go out to a Friday night game and rush back and write a story by 11, just for old time's sake.
I don't. Yeah, I think it would just. It's like falling off a horse. You just get back on and ride again. I think it would settle in real quick.
You have to remind me too. When does the Insider publish, and are most of your stories kind of done for the week in advance because of the nature of the weekly publication?
Well, yeah, that's it. With the Insider, they come out on the weekend. Some, I understand, get the paper on Saturday nights, but my deadline is Wednesday, so I have to have all the photos and all the stories in by Wednesday, and then I'll get a number of emails from the editor Dave Line throughout Wednesday, because he didn't get this or he didn't get that, and that type of thing. So, and then production is today, and then they print tomorrow. So, there is that gap,
right?
Yeah, in there. So it's and getting people to understand, okay, if you want to promote something, that you're gonna, you need to get it to me by the Wednesday before the day you want to, right, that you're going to have the event.
Week and a half early.
Yeah, people do have a problem, getting that down, but
sure,
it presents a little bit of a challenge.
Mike, tell me about the deadline at the paper, and is it different for sports on a Friday night than it would be for news or on a weeknight?
We get a little bit more time on a Friday night just to get everything done. The deadline for cutting off calls and getting our stories done is usually the same, but we get a little extra buffer time to make sure everything fits, because it's, when you go into a Friday night, you can plan all you want, but you don't know how much space everything's going to take, and usually it seems like that's when something else nationally happens, and you got to squeeze that in somewhere. So our deadline, we're usually done by 11:30, and we get till 12:30 on a Friday. So that little extra time, it helps. Yep, it's surprising how, even just an hour, how much of a difference that makes.
Well, I know 12:30, even 11:30 would be a little too late for the news guys.
It's definitely a little too late. I think there's about 5 minutes left in the newscast at 11:30. So, it's kind of organized chaos, and everybody's trying to get their stuff done all at once and get their games together for. If the show's on if we're cutting for the 10 o'clock show, it has to be done by 9:50. If it's for the 11 o'clock show, it has to be done by 10:50. So,
right.
Yeah, it can be quite a rush to try and get everything done on time. So.
And I know the photographers and video editors like to push that limit a little bit. We've done that before too. What put it in perspective too for those people who don't know, Jeremy, of just in terms of rushing back to edit that video, what you've got to do maybe during the game to try to keep tabs on what's happening versus chopping it down to 20, maybe 40 seconds at the most. Sure. You've got to pick just a handful of plays and scan through them quickly as you're editing.
Right, yeah. And at the same time, you kind of want to be fair to both teams too and show good highlights from both sides instead of making it really lopsided or anything like that, depending on how the game goes. So that's one thing you got to kind of keep in mind as you're shooting, that you got to watch for good plays, maybe make a mental note of what time on your camera that took place, and then you got to rush back and put it into the computer and try and find those highlights again. Hopefully either you wrote them down or you got a good enough memory to where you can remember, oh yeah, there was a good tackle or a touchdown here. It's you rush back and you try and find the really good ones that, like you said, sometimes we have 30 seconds, sometimes we have close to a minute of highlights that we have to cut. So it's a matter of finding those highlights and getting them all put together.
And the sports guys on TV that we watch on Friday nights kind of get all the glory of it, but I know the photographers do. You've got the roster in your back pocket, you're getting the highlights, you're putting it together, and you're basically writing it too, because you were the ones that were there.
Right. Our sports anchors and stuff do a great job. They help me out a lot. I'm not the greatest writer in the world, so I kind of defer to them when it comes to a lot of the terms and things like that for my writing and everything. But yeah, you gotta kind of put together at least a rough cut of these are the highlights that I have, and here's kind of a rough script, and at least let them work with that. And but yeah, they do a great job, and they're out on the field shooting a lot of these things too.
Right.
So
the other kind of funny thing about putting it all together is you kind of come down to the deadlines too. Is like you said, you can't stay at all the games the whole time, so you could get 3 touchdowns from one team and nothing from the other team, and then after you leave, the other team scores 6 touchdowns or whatever. It's kind of hard for people to maybe kind of grasp that. Mike, let me bounce back to you. What do you like most about covering high school sports? And do you like football versus basketball or any other sport in any different way?
It's hard not to get caught up in the football and basketball just because they're on a bigger scale. You can cover a great volleyball match, and it's exciting to cover, and you can enjoy it, but there's just not that atmosphere that you have at football and basketball, and it's hard not to get caught up in being a part of it. And I think for me that's the part I like most, is that I get to be a part of this event. when you're standing on the sidelines at a football game, or I like to hang out with you guys on the baseline at the basketball games. I don't need to be down there, but if you guys are there, I want to be there too. You just get to be a part of it. And then when you write about it, I heard a long time ago, someone told me to give the audience something that they can't get watching it sitting in the stands. And I've always kind of taken that to heart, that, in my story, I'm going to find one nugget that if you just sat there and watched it, you didn't get to see, or you didn't get to talk to the coach afterwards like I get to. And so I'm going to give that to you. So it's neat to me to not just always rehash what happened, but, go a step further. What does this mean, and what do people think about it? So it's fun to be able to give the audience that, and just to be a part of the whole scene of it.
Yeah, that's cool. Greg, I assume the same for you, especially with the feature stories that you work on. It's kind of what people don't hear and don't see.
Right, and also what, about players that they don't see or don't hear about so much. I mean, everybody hears about, the guy who, ran for 200 yards and scored 4 touchdowns, or the quarterback who threw for 400 yards and 6 scores or something like that. But to get especially, and that's where coaches do come in and help out, because I often ask them, what is there somebody that really is doing something that special for the team, or that helps the team, that nobody knows about, or nobody hears about, or nobody sees. And often it's the offensive linemen, of course. Is all they don't get much glory. They do all the blocking, they don't do any of the running, but or some special player who has overcome a lot or something like that, and to play and wants to play and has that desire, but isn't the star of the team or something like that. And I think that I'm finding it's a lot. Everyone's going to read about the other guys, but that's what I would hope to do, is to give the people something, the readers, that sort of thing. That a look at what it's like to be the unsung hero, I guess is what you might call them.
Nice. Well, we're at the halfway point here, maybe a little past. Let's take a break on the briefing room. Why don't we come back? We'll talk a little bit more about some of the big stories coming up in high school football, and some of the other things that these guys are working on when we come back here on the briefing room.
What is Up North TV?
It's TV that you do.
You pick the topic.
You write the script. You run the camera.
You edit the video.
It's your vision.
Your perspective.
Your story.
Commercial free.
Free speech.
What is Up North TV?
It's me.
It's you.
It's all of us.
View us on Analog 97.
Cable digital too.
Digital 992.
UpNorthMedia.org.
Welcome back to the briefing room. I'm your host, Bill Froehlich from WTCM Radio, and this week we're talking sports with some of the guys who cover sports across northern Michigan. Across from me, we've got Greg Gielczyk from the Grand Traverse Insider, and as well as Mike Eckert from the Record Eagle, and Jeremy Erickson from 9 and 10 News and Sports. So welcome to you guys. Thanks again for coming in. As we talked the first half a lot about high school football, are there teams, games that you're kind of especially excited about this season, matchups that you watch? What goes through your mind as you kind of get that schedule for the whole semester?
I think the first thing that we obviously always look for is, when do TC Central and TC West play? Because it doesn't matter how good, how bad they are, that game will always be just the biggest game of the year. It's unbelievable, just the scene that happens every time they play that one. So you look at that, and then you look at maybe some of your conference big matchups. I know this year a big one is Kingsley Glen Lake. So you kind of circle where that one's going to be, because that's going to be, we think that's going to be a good one. And then you do the same for like the Lake Michigan, where it looks like maybe Grayling, Elk Rapids, or Elk Rapids, Boyne City. Some of those games are going to be. So you definitely have some games circled and just waiting for them.
Yeah, Jeremy, I know the same thing goes on for the sports guys too. Not only a game or two for each of the videographers, but if you've got a big game, that kind of shifts the scheduling intentionally too, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. The big games, a lot of times for some of those big games, we'll actually have one of our anchors down there live talking about highlights. They know the game best better than I do anyway. So they're down there. They're watching the whole thing. They know the big rivalries. It really is kind of the focus of our sportscast for that night. And they really want to make sure they get the good stuff for that night.
And that's sometimes the exception to the rule of bouncing around from game to game. If you've got that Central West game, you've got a guy, maybe one of your sports guys who's there the whole time, live at 6, live at 11, maybe seen in some cases, right?
Yeah, definitely. There have been a couple games that I covered last year where Jeff Johnson, one of our anchors, reporters, came out and he stayed the whole game. We were there through the whole thing, got to watch it all, and we went live at 6 and 11, and I think maybe even 10, and just to kind of show off what happened that night. And when there are big games like that, people really want to know. So we kind of schedule everything around those games.
Yeah. Greg, what about you? Do you have anything that you're watching for this year, the season in particular? Anything that you're excited about?
Well, like Mike was, like Mike was saying about matchups like TC West and TC Central, of course, is a huge one. But Frankfurt and Benzie, where you've got some ideas for features there. Dave and I have talked about it. Where maybe cousins, one cousin's on Frankfurt's team, the other's on Benzie's team, that sort of thing. You look for those type of things.
Nice.
with a feature-oriented paper, and like you said, other big football matchups too. But being that the games, the game stories and that are going to be handled by the Record Eagle. There again, you look for the feature angle and what you can take from that game, and whether it be a fan, that's gone to every single one of their matchups, home or away, whether he's sick or not, and that sort of thing, and or a couple. Sometimes I remember once there was a husband and wife that went to all these girls' basketball games, so there's all that, there's those sort of things. So that's what, and in that we sometimes I'll get someone to email me and say, hey, did you know about these people and that type of thing. So, and we're always happy to get that, input from the readers.
What do you do in the off season and the downtime between football, basketball, summer? What what else goes into your mind and comes out of your pen and your computer?
Well, yeah, these days it's mostly computer, but like during this off season, summer months, you look, if there's when there's camps around, especially if there's the high school football camps that go on or basketball camps, and if there's some player that coaches that's one to watch, do a little bit about. Or if one of the things we're looking at is doing stuff on seniors who, this is their last shot. What are their hopes for this, this final season? What are they, what's it been? In fact, I was just over to St. Francis girls volleyball practice the other day, and they've got 3 seniors on the team, 2 new coaches. The equal co-coach situation. But talked to the 3 seniors, and like the one girl said at the end, it's just impossible to think it's been 4 years and it's over now, and this is it. I can't believe it's over. I'm going to miss all of this. That's kind of that's the kind of thing you look for.
Mike, what about you? Are you specifically on a high school sports beat? I mean, we've got other the Wolves and the Beach Bums and other stuff too. What else goes on for you other than high school sports?
We do. You've got the Wolves and the Beach Bums to kind of occupy in the summertime, but it's surprising how much just stuff there is. With the races in town. So we did a lot with the Bayshore and with Cherry Fest, doing things beforehand, doing things afterwards. And it surprises you when you think we're so heavily dominated by the school year and high school sports. You think when you get to June there and everybody goes on summer vacation for you too, but it's surprising. No, there's always something to cover, and it's kind of neat because you don't always know what you're in for. You'll go in the office and kind of think what's going to happen today, and you'll get an email from somebody that has a great story for you to track down, and it's there's always something happening.
That's neat. What do you have? Are there stories maybe in the past couple of years up here in Traverse City in the region that stick out for you? Any great things, or stories you particularly enjoyed covering?
Yeah, it's funny because we put so much priority on the game stories and the big athletes and the big stuff, and that's all great to do. But the ones that really stick with you are, like Greg was saying, kind of the untold stories. A couple that come to mind. I did a story about a kid from St. Francis, graduated a couple of years ago, and now he's on the scout team for the women's basketball at Michigan State. So he helps the women's basketball team practice every day. And he doesn't get any glory. The whole practice squad shares a locker in the basement of Breslin Center. And it's a really neat story to tell because, unless you know the kid, you have no idea that he's even doing something like that. So that was one that, it was cool to be able to share that.
That's neat. Jeremy, what about you? Anything that kind of sticks out? I mean, I know 9 and 10 does a lot of feature stories on athletes and sporting events too.
Right, yeah. Well, one thing that kind of stuck out to me, it's not your maybe typical sports story, but sport fishing is still a sport.
Yeah.
And we did a story a couple years back where a guy reeled in a record-breaking brown trout out in Manistee, and that was something else to see. I mean, he had I think it was like 30-40 pound brown trout. I mean, it was massive, and so it was that was kind of a fun one to cover. Yeah.
Nice.
But we do cover a lot of sports. I know names escaping me right now, but basketball player up in Sutton's Bay getting free ride to MSU and things like that.
Anderson.
Dwan Anderson.
Yep, Dwan. Yep. There it is. Yeah. So I mean, it's stuff like that that's a lot of fun to cover too.
Nice. Well, Greg, tell me maybe what we can expect in the next week or two of the Insider. Anything that you're working on?
Well, I won't give anything away, so just kidding. Right now, I just finished with this week, so I'm going over the list. I try to keep a running list, so that you work from week to week on those things. And right now, of course, while the football season is in full swing, also the Blues rugby club, the Traverse Bay Blues Rugby Club has started up. They played their first match and won, and they made the championship game of the Cherry Pit. So at the beginning of the year, he was not thinking it was going to be such a great year, but things have started well for them. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what features there might be there as far as players, because I know he's got foreign guys from South Africa and wherever that some have jobs here now and are playing. So as they get into their season, do more of that.
Anything either of you guys want to plug in particular? I know you've kind of got ongoing coverage all season, so we'll plug that generically for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with the high schools and the beach bums and the playoffs, that'll be another thing that we'll be out covering. The one, I guess, new thing that we're doing is we're really trying to beef up our online presence. So at games that we're at, we're sending live updates to our website. Okay. So that's getting beefed up and scores, and there's a lot happening there with us.
Nice.
Yeah,
Jeremy?
for us, it's
busy.
Yeah, sports overtime just kicked off, so we're back in the swing of things there. Our sports department's been gearing up for this. Seems like all summer long. So
every Friday night.
Yeah, every Friday night at 11. So
great. Well, guys, thanks, Jeremy Erickson and Mike Eckert, and then Greg Gielczyk. Thank you guys all for coming in. Appreciate you joining us on the briefing room. Glad to talk sports. Maybe we'll have you back in playoff time for high schools. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into the briefing room. If you joined us late, hope you'll catch the rebroadcast or find us online as well. And we'll see you next week right here on the briefing room.